Go. Thanks everybody for joining in. I'm Christine Swann here today with Patrick Lee.
Hi,
Thanks for joining me, Pat.
thanks for
Well,
having me.
sure. Hey, so obviously I've been abusing you the last few weeks in my blogs or your paintings
Yeah,
anyway, analyzing them, talking about them, flipping them upside down. So I thought it'd be kind of a good kind of end cap to this kind of session if we were just kind of just talking a little bit back and forth about composition. I know for me it's super important, and I analyze my compositions to death. Sometimes it'll take me weeks or months to do them. I do lots of thumbnails. I think about them. I'll do bigger thumbnails. I'll use different systems too. Like people know that I'm real big into the diagonals or arcs, like sculptors use,
yeah.
for work. There's a lot of different systems, root rectangles. There's so many different systems that kind of
Oh,
can get
yeah.
artists on track. So I have found that's comforting to me building my compositions. But you're much more prolific than I am. I'm more of a thoughtful. Mine take forever, and I know you do a lot of your work a lot faster. So I was wondering how you approach your composition in different works.
I think what I do, I've studied all that stuff like the root rectangles, and I still like, I look at like paintings. I like Vuillard's. I studied a bunch of his paintings, and I would look for the big shapes and how things were laid out. But then I tend to set all that stuff aside and just work. Like I think that stuff informs your work as you study it. But as I'm working, I put all that stuff aside and just work intuitively. And
Yeah.
then I'll go back later. Sometimes not everything works out, but sometimes I'll go back in or I'll notice something, and I just have to kind of let my mind stew over it for a while. Something, if I see something in my own work that I don't like or something I do like, I'll try to record that and kind of have it as a little reminder in the back of my mind as I'm working.
Yeah.
Or as I'm looking at my own stuff, later. But I found when I try to consciously do it like that, it never, like, I always end up kind of overworking it or making something I don't like. I found when I rely on my intuition more, it may be wrong or right, but I've
Right.
usually found it's
Right. It's
it's
funny.
like an intuitive feel.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like an intuitive feel. If it just feels right, or it's like a nice arrangement of shapes or what have
Yeah.
you, then I'll keep it. Sometimes it doesn't work, and sometimes it does feel right. Sometimes I think it feels right, but then some people might not like it, or they're like, that doesn't work or whatever. But I just think you got to go with what you
Yeah.
want for the most part. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm all about the intuition too, but I feel like I need to do it early on before I get to painting. Like I need to feel how a vision, something would come together in an image intuitively first, figure it
Yeah.
out, and then figure out how to paint it. So it's kind of interesting. We're a little different from that. So, but
Yeah.
what's the most important thing you think in composition? What do you think is one of the most important things?
I think there has to be a good. I used to think differently about this, but now I think there has to be a good arrangement of shapes and different sizes of shapes and things like that. Something that dominates, and then like have. One of the things I try to do is have. Well, I try to do. I don't know if it's always successful, but I try to have areas that are really kind of interlocked and kind of technical and intricate, and then big broad areas where your eye can kind of rest.
Yeah.
With just big fields of color or something. And so I'm always arrested kind of by a pattern of light and dark, or a pattern of shapes. And
Yeah.
so a lot of the stuff I work on, like I'm not interested necessarily in the subject, but it just has it has kind of like built-in design that I like. It has nice verticals or horizontals or what have you, shapes that I could see, well, I could really mess with that and
Right.
make that shape more interesting. Or
Are you really big into having a focal point? I know that's a real big thing for me. And when I teach, I'm always beating people up about, well, what's the point? What's the focal point? What are you trying to
Oh
say?
yeah, having a main idea about what
Yeah.
the thing is about. Yeah. And and sometimes for me that thing can be that thing necessarily isn't an object in the piece, but it can be an idea about the piece. Like,
Exactly.
for instance, this thing, I could say this painting's about clutter and angles, oblique angles. There's nothing vertical or horizontal. It's all angled stuff,
Right.
and it's all about that. That is what the painting is about. But it just happens to be a street scene or whatever.
Right.
But there's a lot of busyness,
Mhm.
angles and lines and variations and kind of rhythmic repetition of those things. There's a lot of angles, but they're not all the same, but there's like one here, one here, one here. This one's long, this one's short. And it kind of turns into that arrangement, trying to arrange all that stuff into some kind of cohesive structure within the format of the piece, you know?
Yeah, you're one of the few artists that can take a ton of texture, like just visual texture, and yet somehow there's kind of order to it. So, you know, I think it's a beautiful thing how you compose, especially like that last one I was talking about last week with the cars, and there's all these shapes and all this busy stuff, but you still have this clear hierarchy of what's going in there and what you want people to look at. And so, you know, we like that.
Yeah, yeah. And I like having texture too. Thank you. I like having different, I don't always do this, but I like having some kind of varying gradation of texture. Like you might have some big areas that are really not textured at all, or they're very thin, or they're different kind of texture, like something really drippy and watered down. And then you have other areas where it's really thick.
Yeah.
Just kind of laid on, or, you know, sometimes I'll smush my fingers around in it, or paper towels, and it's just like a mess of material. And it becomes about the material and that, and those kind of passages and the subject, you know, so there's so much stuff to do. It's like it gets confusing maybe sometimes. So you want to do too much, so you got to do more. I think it may be why I work a lot, because I was like, I want to do this and this, and then I want to try this and do this and this one, and then I want to do another thing in this one, you know. So
yeah, you were not precious with your paintings, that's for sure. You throw them around, paint over them, tackle them. I'm happy to say the painting that I have of yours that I talked about before earlier in my blog was actually something you were going to paint over, and I saved it. So the painting that I rescued, because I rescued Pat's painting before he destroyed it. So that's how I got it.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. It's because a lot of them do, you know, eventually, you know, and I've talked with people, you know, after you see a painting hanging in your studio for, I don't know, a few months or even a year, if it's an old one, be like, you know what am I really, you know, you're not married to it, you know, so you could say, well, I'll just paint over to kind of work with what's there to build off and make something else. I think it's nice to work on an already painted surface, you know, especially if it is something, if it looks like something, you know. It's fun.
Yeah, you're good. All right, last piece of advice. What piece of advice would you throw out there for people that are always fighting with composition?
I would say to study. One of the best things I ever did, I think, for me, was to just study, find paintings you like. And one thing I do is I'll turn the painting upside down and just take a tracing of it, just the major lines, to figure out what's the major motif as far as a shape in this. Is it round? Is it vertical, horizontal, triangular, angled, whatever, and try to find that out and see how that kind of shape is repeated and varied throughout the piece. And to look at that in like not only the linear, but then to go and take that idea and look at the black and white, the value pattern. Like even if it means taking a picture of the painting with your phone and making it black and white, and increasing the contrast to see what the patterns really do. You know, are there varied shapes, directional shapes? Do they overlap and interlock? You know, things like that. How do they do that? And like I said, you don't have to necessarily take all that knowledge you learn from that particular painting or that series of paintings you study, but you take the knowledge, the basic idea, and it kind of becomes your muscle memory. It kind of runs as a routine in the back of your head, and it informs the work you do later. You'll notice maybe your pattern's getting better, or your focus on pattern getting more acute, or you're more sensitive to it. That would be the one thing. That's something I still do. I still try to do. So I would say anybody working with that would, you know, do that to kind of as an overall thing.
Just paint. Just paint
work
every day, man. You got to get in there and you got to do it. All right. Well, thank you so much.
And all that stuff I'm talking about can be done.
I'm sorry, Pat.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Sure. No problem.
What's that?
Have a happy Thanksgiving this week to you and your family, and appreciate you doing this, and you take care.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Christine. Have a happy Thanksgiving, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
Talk to you soon. Bye, Pat. Thank you.